watching California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest today, we have Mayor Jan Marx of San Luis Obispo. She'll be followed by John Ashbaugh, a member of the City Council also in San Luis Obispo. And then we'll be speaking with Kim Murry. She is the Long Range Planning Deputy Director in San Luis Obispo. But the theme of this program is how happy San Luis Obispo residents are living in this beautiful city. Wow. I was looking at a survey you sent me. 98% of everyone who responded to the survey rated their quality of life either medium or high, and 81% said high.
81% said high, right.
Jan Marx, where in the world does that happen?
Well, it happens in the happiest place in North America,
That's
obviously.
what we heard. Who said that?
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey?
Oprah Winfrey, yeah.
Quoting
Dan Buettner from the book Thrive by the National Geographic.
So this is based upon a survey that
Yes.
was recently taken. Tell us about
Right.
the survey, tell us about the prior survey, and then we'll proceed.
Right. Well, actually, Kim Murry can tell you more detail than I
good.
can.
And we'll talk to her soon.
Yeah, but I wanted to say it was distributed to more than 25,000 residents and businesses in the utility bills.
Right.
And about 2,100 people responded, so that was about a 10% response.
But think about it, only about 50,000 people live in San Luis Obispo, so you got a pretty high response rate.
Right, 45,000.
Yeah. So that's a pretty high response rate.
It's a pretty high response rate. And then we also had an online option. And the survey was modeled on another survey that was taken in 1988 that asked very similar questions. It was updated because things have changed since 1988.
But what was remarkable to me as I read through the results is how similar the responses were over the last 3 decades, essentially.
Right.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it's interesting. It means to me that there is a very cohesive and clear kind of community culture in San Luis Obispo that people may not be aware of when they move here, but they like it. They get it, they like it, and they understand it.
I want to talk about some of the specific breakout responses, and I found it very interesting. I'm that guy that would find this interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe our viewers will as well. And so when we look at the quality of life issues, several choices were given on a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being most important. This is page 4 of the survey.
Yeah,
we can look at
you.
it together.
Okay.
And the top 3 responses, in terms of getting 5 as the response in importance: natural environment, crime, which surprised me, and healthy food.
Well, the crime level.
Crime level.
That it's a low crime level.
So that's what the response meant,
Yeah.
is they were pleased that
They
San
were
Luis Obispo had a low crime level.
that there's a low crime level.
I mean, it just makes me sick. You guys are all so happy here. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. Okay, well, let's talk about the other 2 responses then. And they kind of, I'm sorry. And
That's okay, I
they
get
play into each other.
Yeah.
Natural environment, 71% find it very important, and access to healthy foods. You know, crunchy granola, 45% find it very important. So talk to me about that. Were these surprising to you?
No, actually, I have to say that it's consistent with my understanding of the community values, and it really is. It's deeply gratifying to find my own values and that of most of my friends and neighbors reflected in this survey. And as mayor and city council person, when I have run for office, that's the basis of my platform, really, is that to continue to preserve our natural and human and fiscal resources.
Now, the category that came in 4th, and I have to admit I was a little surprised by this, was educational opportunities. 40 to 43% said it was extremely important, most important. I mean, yes, 4th is good, but this is the home of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I would have thought it would beat out, for example, access to healthy foods. I don't know, call me crazy. What's your sense?
Well, actually, Cuesta College and Cal Poly are not going to go away.
Right.
They're not going to go anywhere. So I think that it's something that it's more or less the status quo.
So there's a general happiness and...
Yeah, and then there are a lot of people who live in the city who everybody eats, right? But not everybody goes to college or has college-age kids.
Fair enough.
So, you know, I think that makes sense.
Here was another interesting point. This is on page 5, table 5, particular place for enjoyment.
Yes.
Surprise for me, downtown 37%,
Right.
park 11%. Now I guess if you probably added up all the open spaces, they would likely beat downtown, but you still have downtown coming in at first place. Do you see that?
Yeah, as a particular place of enjoyment. I'm not sure how well crafted that question was, because the downtown certainly is a particular place, but open space, we've got 6,000 acres of it. So, you know, but if you notice on the next page, on table 6, the downtown also comes in second as the least liked place of enjoyment.
Ka-ching, yes, touche. So it is interesting.
So it is interesting because and one finding that came out of this survey is that many people feel that there are too many bars downtown, and we hear that a lot at City Council.
But what would the Cal Poly students do without the bars? They're an economic engine. Can't we say it that way?
Well, you can say it that way, but then do we need that many? I mean, you know.
Are they staying in business?
Pardon?
Are they staying in business?
Oh, yes, they definitely
Sales
are.
tax?
And they're opening all the time.
Sales tax.
That's right. That's right. No, I mean from that point of view, but I think we need to have a more kind of balance, sort of a balanced approach. They don't want it to become a place that only is like a nightclub.
Of course. No, I understand.
You know.
Now, let's talk about growth, because there is no doubt that San Luis Obispo, like you said, values its open space. And when asked about growth opportunities, I think it's fair to say that the residents spoke loud and clear. Keep growth within available resources, 66%. Avoid harm to the natural environment, 60%. It's just overwhelmingly in favor of the environmental slow growth, maybe even no growth position. Would you say it's slow growth or no growth?
Well, it says keep growth within available resources. That implies there will be growth.
But just as the mayor, what's your feeling? I mean,
well, I think smart growth is the term of art. They're basically looking for opportunities to grow within the city boundaries. Is another category that did well. We've annexed quite a bit of land over the past 20 years, and that land that has been annexed is now within the city borders. There's plenty of room to build a lot more housing, to build business parks. To
now,
build
speaking of housing, there was a question asked, if the city was to change current residential growth rate of 1%, what would you prefer? Well, 55% said don't change it.
Right.
So what does that say to you? I mean, like you said, there's room for growth. I mean, is it time in your mind to educate that maybe we need to bump up the 1% to 2%? Or
well, actually, I would agree with the don't change it myself, because in fact we have never gotten to the 1%.
Yes.
We've never gotten. It's sometimes a half of 1%, and part of keeping the community healthy is to grow at a sustainable rate. So we have new housing coming on now, 177 new units coming on, and the infrastructure's coming on. But what that means is that community, you won't have a situation where a whole lot of people are moving there, they don't know each other.
I understand.
You know, and so that's what creates high crime.
So in our final moments, what do you take away from the overall sense of the 2012 community survey?
Well, I think that the city of San Luis Obispo has actually found a kind of formula that is unique to this place, and it seems to be working. And I have to say that in 1992, I worked with a group of people who were creating the vision for San Luis Obispo, which is in our land use and circulation element. And I'll just read the first sentence. Our vision is of a sustainable community within a diverse natural and agrarian setting, which is part of a larger ecosystem upon which its existence depends. San Luis Obispo will maintain its healthy and attractive natural environment valued by residents, its prosperity, and its sense of safety and community within a compact urban form.
And it's worked for 20 years. It looks like it's going to keep working.
I think so.
Her name is Jan Marx, Mayor of San Luis Obispo. When we come back, we'll talk to John Ashbaugh, council member of San Luis Obispo, about the same survey. We'll be right back. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, John Ashbaugh, member of the San Luis Obispo City Council, and we just spoke with Mayor Marx about the Quality of Life and Future Development Survey. We got her take on it. I want to get your take on it, if we may.
Sure.
And I thought I would just kind of go through it because it is fascinating. Well, let's back up. What exactly is this survey? Who did you survey? How did it happen?
Well, there are a lot of different people that have contributed to this, and it's an outreach effort as part of our land use and circulation element update, which our land use element was last really overhauled in 1994. So we're coming up on 20 years of that. And it was a great general plan. It was well ahead of its time, but it's not anymore.
No, it's time to look forward.
We went out and polled the community a number of different ways, online, through their utility billings.
And you actually got more than 2,000 responses, and for a city of about close to 50,000, I mean, that's a pretty good return rate.
It's unbelievable.
Right, and so let's talk about some of the highlights. Sure. You know, as we know, and we've said this before, Oprah Winfrey called San Luis Obispo the happiest place in North America. And when you have an 81% rate of people saying, how would you rate the overall quality of life in San Luis Obispo? High, she's right.
She's at least got some evidence now. We have some evidence to support that. Yeah.
That's stunning.
And frankly, the original quote came from an author named David Buettner, who had quoted survey data taken, years ago. But this has been a sustained...
That is stunning.
Yeah, it is.
So it's 81% high, almost 18% medium. Low is 1.2%. Translation, 98.8% of the people think the quality of life in San Luis Obispo is pretty darn good.
And we hear that from people going door to door. Now, I will tell you this, Brad. At the city council meetings,
you'd never know. You would never know.
Tune into our city council meetings on charter, and frankly, you'll find the first 10, 15, often half an hour of a council meeting is taken up with people who have complaints.
Right.
And there are many people that we hear from repeatedly. Some of them are actually running for city council, and that's fine. That's their right. And we're obligated to listen to them. And on occasion, they actually really do bring in good ideas that we need to implement.
Now, here's one point I thought was fascinating. The citizens were asked, what is the greatest problem facing San Luis Obispo? And as I mentioned earlier, the number one issue, I would not have predicted this, homelessness at 19%.
And that's borne out. That's borne out too by a lot of the testimony we get at City Hall, and frankly, the issues we're dealing with. We're having to confront a lawsuit which was filed last February, March, in the spring sometime. We've settled that lawsuit in July.
And I get it. I mean, we've talked about homelessness on this program with a variety of elected officials, but I didn't realize it was being felt that acutely by so many people. I mean, look, it's only 19%, but it's the number one.
And it also says something about the possibility that there are an awful lot of people in San Luis Obispo who are not happy. And it is, if you're homeless, regardless of how you got to be homeless, it is very hard work being homeless. And I don't envy any of these people. I also don't, frankly, I try not to cast judgment upon them. But sometimes it's hard because some of them really are hard cases. They're determined to be on the streets on their own. They're kind of the rejection of society.
And what's interesting too is part of the issue that San Luis Obispo faces with its homeless population is most, as I understand it, are not native. They have come into San Luis Obispo.
As I understand, about 40% are, I think, have some origin, and even more than that, have friends, family.
But that's the challenge: is that being the happiest place on earth has pluses and minuses.
Oh yeah.
People can will want to come to try to turn the page, and sometimes that becomes more difficult.
And we don't want to be known as the Mecca for all homeless people throughout the world to come and find a place on our sidewalk here. We're not Bombay, we're not Calcutta, we're not Santa Monica,
I was waiting
we're
for
not
you to say
Santa
that.
Barbara.
I was waiting for you to say that.
But we do have a problem that is growing, and its character is changing, the face of it is changing, and we hear from our constituents more and more that they're becoming a lot less willing to work with some of these people.
Now,
some of them have been very belligerent.
After that, the next question asked for respondents to rate quality of life aspects, 1 to 5, 5 being most important. The number one most important quality of life aspect in San Luis Obispo, no surprise here, the natural environment, air quality, and open space. Overwhelmingly, 71% gave it a 5.
Exactly. Almost anywhere you go in San Luis Obispo, you have a sense of being connected to the hills, to the creeks, to sometimes unimproved parks, and maybe the golf course, Laguna Lake. You've got access virtually everywhere. The open space network around the city also penetrates into the city. And one of the things we're hoping to do through our new land use and circulation element update is actually improve the connections that people have from their neighborhoods to these open space areas. Give me one example.
Please.
I'm hoping that we can advance the idea of a footbridge across the upper arm of Laguna Lake to connect Laguna Middle School to Laguna Lake Park. I think it's an idea whose time has come. It is amazing to me, I only learned this recently, that we actually have a common property line between the city and Laguna Middle School. So if we can convince the school district to help us to build this footbridge, we might be able to get some state money called Safe Route to School money and build this little footbridge so people can actually drive into the park, drop their kids off, and that way they could get to Laguna Middle School through the park and across this wonderful resource we have that a lot of people don't even know it's there or how big it is.
Now here's what's interesting though. Another question was asked about how the community would like to see the city grow, in what form and method. 66% said they want to keep growth within available resources. 60% they want to avoid harm to the natural environment.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, clearly there's maybe a small schizophrenia there, small.
No, not really. I think that the ideas of growing with better opportunities, fostering this entrepreneurial culture, you and I have talked about this before.
Right.
We want to have a lot of small businesses being able to get started, young people out of Cal Poly,
but like,
being able to feel like they can start businesses.
But if
here.
you're adding that bridge, for example, at Laguna, I mean, would that comport with grow within your resources, avoid harm?
Well, there would be some environmental trade-offs there, but I think they would be mitigable.
Right.
I mean, those are the kinds of things we can look at. Okay, we'll disturb some wetlands a tiny bit, but we'll also, this is always been my philosophy. You get people into the natural environment, and they will come to appreciate it more. If you give them access to it, you build footbridges and bicycle paths, hiking trails, mountain bike facilities, get people to experience the outdoors. And yes, we have to make some trade-offs. I know, for example, in my own backyard, it backs up to Bishop's Peak, and before the city built the trail up Bishop's Peak, one of the most popular trails, maybe the most popular trail in the city, there was a nest of golden eagles up there. I remember seeing the
lovely.
It was terrific.
Well, speaking of homes, if I may say, residential areas, the question was asked, if the city were to change its residential rate above 1%, what would you prefer? Well, 55% said, don't change it.
No,
don't change it. I mean, a huge number, considering the other options.
And our growth rate over the last 10 or 15 years has only been about 0.5%.
Right.
So I think people are comfortable with a rate of growth between 0.5% and 1%. I don't think there's nearly as much concern about rampant, out-of-control growth as there was. I remember a lot of very, very stormy public hearings at both the city and the county level. Back in the early 1980s, we had well drillers circling the county board of supervisors, with their big rigs. And
right.
It was pretty bloody. It was, but I think there's an emerging consensus now, and I think it is possible. We talk about bipartisanship at the national level. I think you can talk locally about a consensus that has emerged around the issues of growth and the environment. You find organized labor working with environmentalists, working with the business community, and there's a great deal of consensus. We don't want to foul our air. We don't want to spread out uncontrollably into the open space.
That's what the survey seems to suggest.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear. Okay, we thank you for joining us. He is John Ashbaugh, member of the San Luis Obispo City Council. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Kim Murry. She is a long-range planning deputy director in the city. You must know Kim. She'll be talking more about it. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back. back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Yes, we are now joined by Kim Murry. She is the Deputy Director of Long Range Planning for the City of San Luis Obispo, and she and her department were intricately involved in the survey of which we just spoke with Jan Marx, the mayor, and John Ashbaugh, the council member. So, having been so involved in this survey, what do you make of it? I mean, I know there was one in 1988, now you have one in 2012. What do you think?
Well, it's been a great opportunity to kind of see how the community sentiment has really remained very strong.
Yeah, you're just being smug because 98% of them said they're happy, so I don't want to hear it.
They're happy, and but the things that they valued in 1988 are still the things that they value now.
And Mayor Marx has said that, which is quite remarkable given how much has changed since 1988 in terms of technology. It's still open space, and more open space.
Yes. Definitely.
Let's talk about downtown, if I may, because I admittedly, and we have this great map, chart, graphic, whatever you want to call it, am a big fan of the downtown area. What was so interesting, and Mayor Marx mentioned this, 37% said they went to play downtown and they loved it, but I think it was 18% said they didn't like it so much.
Yes.
So there's a love-hate with downtown.
It's a love-hate, and the love is because of the historic buildings and all of the vitality downtown. The hate, I think, is more along the lines of traffic and sometimes the late-night activities.
So downtown, that's the Higuera Street. That would be part of downtown.
Right.
But come on, I mean, Higuera, it's legendary. I mean, it's San Luis Obispo. I mean, that's what you got the bubblegum alley, you got the barbecue restaurants. I mean, the mission. I mean,
it's the heart of the downtown.
But in so many ways, when you talk about San Luis Obispo, I mean, those Thursday nights are legendary.
Yes. And
in the best sense. You know, Mayor Marx had mentioned there's been some concerns that maybe too many bars were opening up. But when I go there, I mean, I take my daughters there. They're 10 and 8. I mean, it feels family friendly. I don't feel as if I'm being overrun by drunk college students. Yes?
I agree. And actually, the survey, it's interesting that you mentioned the bars. 1988 also had the same sentiments. Wow, gosh, there may be too many bars in the downtown. So I think it's the perception of what happens in the downtown at night.
Right. But so what do you do as a long-range planning commissioner or director, whatever it may be, with schizophrenic results like this?
Well, the reason we did the survey was because we're updating our land use and circulation elements. Those are the blueprints for how the city's going to develop into the future. And so we did the survey, again, to see how the sentiment had changed, if it had, and to look at ways of, how do we grow into the next 20 years. So, just by nature of the community, there is going to be some schizophrenia, but
not a lot, actually.
But
that was one of the few issues where there was,
yes.
as I noticed. This surprised me. There was a question: what do you think? What are the greatest problems of San Luis Obispo? Homelessness was way up there, which is sad and tragic in so many different ways. I was surprised by that a bit, but I spoke with Councilman Ashbaugh about it. In second place was traffic. Now, it's still only 10%, but it is second place. I don't know. I mean, San Luis Obispo doesn't feel like it has a lot of traffic compared to, Los Angeles, the Bay Area. What's going on here?
Well, I think part of it could be timing. So when you're hitting the peak times of going to work, going to school, dropping kids off or picking them up, there are areas that experience more traffic than others. Definitely Los Osos Valley Road in the right-in sections came up as having issues with traffic.
And so you brought another great graphic for us. This deals with motorized circulation. Yes. And what's nice about San Luis Obispo is you're focused on motorized circulation. That's important. We do live in California. But you're also focused on non-motorized circulation.
Absolutely.
And this is a very bikeable, walkable city.
And we're hoping to become more so.
Right. How? Talk to us about number 4 right here.
Again, that's part of the circulation element update, and state law has actually come into play that says you need to evaluate all your modes of circulation when you're updating your circulation elements. So we'll be looking at different intersections, different street segments, and say, how do they operate for a car? How do they operate for a bike? How do they operate for the pedestrian? And all of that goes into that evaluation of what could improve those areas.
I think it's fair to say, and we mentioned this, if there's one area where San Luis Obispo residents were not schizophrenic in any way, shape, or form, it dealt with open space.
Yes.
They spoke loud and clearly in terms of the importance of open space. When asked about quality of life elements, natural environment, air quality, open space, number one by leaps and bounds.
Absolutely.
On a scale of 1 to 5, 71% gave it a 5.
Yes.
Not even close to anything else. And so when you look at community amenities in this city, that means open space.
It means open space. It means connections between the open spaces and from the neighborhoods into the open spaces.
So talk to us about what comes next for San Luis Obispo in terms of open space. Mayor Marx had mentioned that you've been annexing some areas. Some could be used as open space, some could be used as residential potentially. Mr. Ashbaugh talked about maybe connecting I think it was Laguna Middle School with, you probably know what I'm talking about, with, maybe put a bridge between those two. But there are a lot of opportunities to create open space or more functional open space. Is that an oxymoron, more functional open space?
No, I think that is one place where there is a little bit of a push and pull. People love the open space, and sometimes they love it so much they want to spend a lot of time in it. Keeping it accessible by people is really important, but also keeping it so it doesn't degrade is important as well. So there's a balance.
That literally is an inner conflict. I mean, it's the epitome of oxymoron. I mean, accessible, yet don't just trample all over it.
Right. So that's where establishing trails in the appropriate places and making sure that the vegetation that's really sensitive isn't where the trail is, and all of those things.
So the good news about San Luis Obispo County, and the city, of course, is the largest in the county, is that unemployment is low. And as a result, you haven't been hit as hard as other areas in terms of government budgets. And the reason I ask you that is, what can you do to effectuate these plans? I mean, is there funding? It's not as if government is the solution to all future plans, but what do you do?
So when you're planning for the future, you're also looking at how you implement those plans. And so part of this update will include a fiscal evaluation. What kind of infrastructure do we see? What are the methods that can be used to pay for it? Developer impact fees are always one of those things that you don't want to have so high that it discourages housing development, but you don't want to have it so low that it isn't funding the infrastructure that's needed to support it. So there is a sweet spot there.
And it's interesting because when residents were asked about types of development that they prefer, not enough, too much, government agencies was amongst the highest at too much. Although, to be fair, only 26% said too much, 70% said enough, but it did get the highest score at too much. And do you take anything away from that?
I think it's maybe a sentiment of the time right now.
Right, no, there's no doubt that it is a sentiment. Okay, so where do we go from here? What next?
So where we go from here is we've been doing a lot of public outreach. We're scheduling workshops.
Right. There are meetings coming up. How long will you be having meetings?
This process goes on for another year and a half, 2 years.
So this is good.
So it's a long-range process.
So long-range planning. So is there a website we can go to if we want to attend a meeting, get a date of a meeting?
I'm so glad you asked that.
And I'm glad to have asked.
Yes, slow2035.com.
Wow, okay, I'm slow2035.com, terrific, okay.
It has updates about upcoming workshops. It has all of the materials we have a 17-member task force, a resident task force that is giving us input all along this process, and all of their materials are posted there, digital recordings of the meetings, summaries of workshops, and the survey. All of that information is on our website.
How exciting has this been for you?
It's been very exciting, and it's been very, very fun to hear people's ideas about the community.
And I have to think at some level it's gratifying. It kind of reaffirms what we know about the people who live in San Luis Obispo, that they are happy, they love their community, they want to protect their community. And congratulations for being the continued happiest place on earth. Her name is Kim Murry. She is in long-range planning with the city of San Luis Obispo. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thank you for watching California Edition.